My sermon today is going to be on take up your cross. Take up your cross. It's still linked to that same sermon of how far will you go with Jesus, because you need to take up your cross if you want to go far. Now let's have Luke chapter 9 from verse 21. Luke 9:21. I always prefer the New King James Version. Media. Verse 21 says, "And he strictly warned and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised the third day." Then he said to them all, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and is himself destroyed or lost? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his own glory and his Father's and of the holy angels." So in this passage, Jesus speaks about the suffering that lay ahead of him. And that's what we celebrate during as we enter Lent and get to Good Friday. So this must have been during the Lenten, our own equivalent of Lenten. He says, he's talking about the suffering that lay ahead of him. And he noted that he will suffer many things, including rejection by the church leaders. And he also spoke about his crucifixion. He spoke about the resurrection on the third day. And he went on to talk about what it means and what it will cost us to follow him. And there are many people, unfortunately, who claim to be Christians, but their relationship is just like they are admiring who Jesus is from a distance. They don't want to come close because they believe coming close will expose the other things concerning them. And for some of us, our worship, for some Christians, their worship has to be convenient. Otherwise, they are not part of it. You know, some people go to church when it's convenient, and when it's not, they decide to stay home. Oh, I need some rest. Let me just stay home. Oh, yesterday I was out very late with my friends, and so I'm too tired to go to church. But most people never go out very late with their friends on Sunday night because they are going to go to church. The children don't sleep late from Sunday to Thursday because they will go to school. But on Saturdays, we say this is our night out, or the children are on holiday or it's weekend. They stay long. So going to church in the morning becomes a problem. Some of us cannot even sacrifice a little of what God has blessed us with to support a sister or brother in need. But we are supposed to be followers of Jesus. And Jesus is asking each one of us who calls himself or herself a true believer that if we want to follow him, we must walk the same path that he walked. In other words, Jesus is calling us to a life of complete surrender and trust. He's asking us to take up our cross, and we must place his will above our own desires and our human convenience. And its place, we must choose obedience, we must choose submission, we must choose humility, we must choose love at any cost. Yes, and that's what it means to take up our cross and follow Jesus. And I said in earlier sermons, living this way to follow Christ has to be a daily practice. It's not just when it's convenient. It's not when it's easy. It's not for Sundays. It's every day. And through good or not so good times, every true worshiper must be prepared to take up their cross and follow Jesus. Every day, every hour, every minute, every second. Even when you are eating, you have to recognize that God has provided for you. Even when you decide that you are now rich, you want to buy a new dress with shoe and bag to match, we must recognize that it was provision from God. When somebody even blesses you and gives you a gift, whether it is small, medium, big, mighty, we must recognize that God has blessed us through somebody. It's by His grace, by His favor, that we are where we are, that we have opportunities that other people may not have. It's not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but it's God that shows mercy. And therefore, every day we must take a decision to turn away from every self-centered ambition, and we take our cross towards a life that is shaped by the example that Jesus Christ already laid for us. You know, the kind of self-denial required when we take up our cross to follow Jesus, it must come with complete willingness to obey his commandments. It must come with willingness to serve one another. It must come with willingness to suffer, if we must, even unto death, for the sake of Christ. And I have asked so many times since the beginning of the year, because that is the burden God put in my heart at the beginning of the year. He said, the times are dangerous. The times, I know Daddy used to say the times are evil, and I remember Marvel joking during December that her dad used to always say that the times are evil. That if only he was alive now, she doesn't know what he will now say, that the times have truly become very, very evil. You know? How far are we willing to go with Jesus? And this question remains relevant every day of our lives. We can be confronted today, we can be confronted tomorrow with the unimaginable, that only denying Christ can save our lives. And if this does happen to any one of us, what will be your choice? Will we take up our cross and continue to follow Jesus, knowing that he may cost us our lives? Now, when Jesus calls us to take up the cross, he's inviting us into a life that would always be marked. Like I said before, we must be humble. We must be obedient. Even the Bible says that Jesus was obedient even all the way to the cross. Will we be obedient to pay a price? Will our love for others mean that sometimes we will forfeit what we want so that we can bless other people? Will our love for our brethren mean that sometimes that money we have saved for the rainy day, we decide that by God's grace it won't rain, that we will take it to support other people? Like I tell you people, I said, I had to come to a point where I said, this idea of saying, oh, offering is small, this one is small, that's a challenge God has given me. That for as long as I am alive and in this church, the church will lack nothing. Even if it means I livings, the church will lack nothing. Because Christ did not send me all the way for 34 years to work so hard and succeed so hard so that I can build a bank account. He sent me so that I can have a way to support his people and the ministry he's given unto us. If we decide to take up our cross, this must be manifest in the ordinary choices we make daily, serving him quietly, forgiving others freely as he forgave us, and trusting God's plans and purpose for us, even when it turns out to be very difficult. And this is the clarity, and that is the courage that we need to receive from a season like Lent, like Good Friday, like Easter. That's what the clarity brings to us, that we must be willing and yielded to go all the way. There is no turning back when you follow Jesus. He says that he that puts his hands to the plow and looks back is not worthy. You put your hand to the plow, be prepared to go all the way. The Bible reading earlier from the book of Luke, chapter 14, from 25 to 35. You know, in that Bible, in that reading, this commandment to take up our cross gets more serious and deeper. So let's look at it. Luke 14:25 says, Now great multitudes went with him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father. You can see the earlier one talked about carrying the cross daily, but now he's talking about hating the father, the mother, the wife, and children, brothers and sisters. I'm still wondering why husband is not in this. They must have made a mistake. They have to reprint this version of the Bible. You know, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life. Okay, so the husbands, then your own life, it's included now. Also, he cannot be my disciple. Next, 27. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now in verse 25, we are told that great multitudes went with Jesus. So instead of preaching prosperity gospel that will keep them excited and happy, Jesus is telling them to hate their father, their mother, their wife, their children, their brothers, their sisters, and even their own lives to show that they are truly his disciples. Can we imagine the churches today that have great multitude? Are they preaching that same message? You know, are they really preaching that message that we need to pick up our cross daily? We need to forsake. We put Christ before all things. In Jesus' time, some followers left him because they said what he was telling them to do was hard. In John chapter 6, verse 66, he says that from that time, many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. So there is nothing, people who think that following Christ is difficult today is nothing new. Even in Jesus' time, despite the many miracles that he did, there were still people who decided to leave because they felt it was just too much. Maybe today in church, we are also worried today that our church members will leave if we tell them about picking up their cross daily to follow Jesus under all circumstances, especially in difficult times. Of course, it's very easy to follow Jesus when everything is good. Come and dance, my Lord is good, my Lord is. But when things turn against you, just because, especially if it is because you are following Jesus, what will you do? Will you still carry the cross? Will you still take up the cross for Jesus, even if it comes with great difficulty and suffering? Now, let's look at the text in Luke chapter 14:26. It says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, his own life, he cannot be my disciple. This is very serious. And also in the second Bible reading we had today, which was the book of Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 to 39, it says, do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Next. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against his mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. For he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. 39. And he who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. So when Jesus made these statements, do you think he really meant that we should hate our fathers, our mothers, our wives, husbands, daughters, sons, in-laws, our sons, our relatives, even our own lives? Definitely, Jesus is not saying we should hate ourselves, our family. He is just saying that we must give him our undivided attention. Even in our relationships with family members, people must see Jesus in our lives. In everything, Jesus must come first. That's all he's saying. But I tell you that the good news is that when we put Jesus first, we will get everything else right. A lot of times we don't get things right because we are being selfish. We don't walk in love. We walk in pride. We walk in selfishness. We walk in covetousness. And that's why you find brother fighting brother, sister fighting sister. Father has died, left one small property. Everybody wants to kill the other, instead of them to go and work hard to get their own. It's because they have not put Jesus first. Because if they put Jesus, even if it's one person that put Jesus first, they will say, just go. Don't give me. My God will provide for me. So if we put Jesus first, we will find that even in our relationship with our husbands, with our wives, with our children, everything, that we will do the right thing. But you know, getting everything right because we are following Jesus does not mean that everybody will be happy. But let us do the right thing. If you as a husband, you love your wife and treat her the same way Christ treated and loved the church, it's only a stupid woman that will not reciprocate. And when you love your wife and she submits to you, it's only a foolish man that will not reciprocate. If as a parent we honor our children, they will honor us. But sometimes as parents, we don't. So there, if we live by biblical principles, we will not have any problem putting Christ first before any relation. Yes, but like I said, sometimes you walk by Christly principles, everybody is still not happy. Because they say among the two of them must always be that Judas who will decide that they will not follow Christ. Maybe that they will be going to the witch doctor. So they will not be happy. There will always be the covetous. There will always be the greedy ones. Like the prodigal son, who couldn't wait for the father to die and say, please give me my own share. But the father had a good heart, because most fathers wouldn't have received him the way the father received them back. So there will always be, it doesn't mean everybody will be happy. And that's why the text in Matthew 10:36 says, a man's enemies will be those of his own household. You know, you watch some of these movies in online. There are some of them I watch online and I say, this cannot, there is no way. A brother shows up and says that the brother must give him 60 billion so that he can buy Mercedes. He doesn't want to work. They've given him house. He sold house. Yeah. A man's enemies will be those of his household. After all, when Jesus came, they said, isn't this Jesus the son of a carpenter? Who believed? Because people are family members. When you don't do what they expect of you as a family, because you are following Jesus, they will become enemies. You become their enemy. Therefore, Jesus is saying that if you love family too much, to the extent that you are going to drop your cross in order to please them, you are not worthy to be his disciple. You know, sometimes I have arguments on certain issues of principle with my children. They said they want to do this, they want to do that, they want to do this. I said, you will not see me there. Oh, you mean you won't come to visit if this happens? I said, you will not see me. But won't you miss us? I said, I will miss you, but I will not come. Because it's a matter of principle that is settled in the Bible. I cannot. There are things, people sin. People go the wrong way. But there has to be a line. And sometimes when I tell them, recently I went for a meeting in one of the African countries, and we were talking with the ambassador and his team, and then we were talking about providing funding to the country, and he said they were willing to provide funding, but they had a problem. The problem is that country had just passed a law against LGBTQ, so he was not sure whether his country would still be willing to provide them any development finance. So I told him, I said, look, you cannot hold them. We have our own culture in Africa. Just like you people don't condone polygamy. We have not come to tell you you must do polygamy. Why do you want to force us? I said, I am a Christian. When I have arguments with my children and they try to justify why people should be allowed to do that, and I told them it's not allowed in my home, and that's it. And if any of my children this goes that way, they are banished. One of the white men there went red. He was shocked. So when I came out, my colleague said, "You're always looking for trouble. That man is probably one of them." Because from his reaction, you could see that he was very uncomfortable with what I said. But I was saying it from the deepest. I didn't, think of him. I just said what I had to say, because that's my conviction. But the man was too distraught to even concentrate on the meeting. So I said, look, I told them, I said, culturally, I said, even in my country, even in this country where they are banning it, there are people who do that. And they've existed from time. For the fact that we didn't pass a law doesn't mean that nobody has disturbed them. But our culture, in our culture, is an abomination. So you cannot force us to accept abomination because you want to give us small money. We need to be able to draw the line. There are parents I know that have gone to the extent of cursing their children for one thing or the other. That wasn't even half as bad as that. So that's what the Bible is saying, is that when family require that you begin to accept the things that are unbiblical, you must put your feet down and say, this is crossing the line. And of course, when you do that, the family is not going to be happy with you. They'll become your worst enemies. But are you willing to take up your cross? Are you willing to go that far with Jesus? Or are you going to paper it over? How will it be heard that my brother doesn't come, or my mother did not come, or my father did not come, or my sister did? There are families that I know that have not only said they will not go, but they banned both their wife and their other children from going to a wedding. And then anybody who goes, you stay there. Basic principle. Are we willing to go that far to stand up for Jesus? The fact is that despite our best intentions, there will be a cost for following Jesus. There will be a cost. There are wives, their husbands left them because they followed Jesus. There are husbands that their wives left them, who were probably other religions, but the moment they declared for Christ, wives left them. There are those that even took children away simply because they didn't want their children to join the other spouse in following Jesus. There are offices where you work and you see people stealing. taking bribe. And if you don't join them, you become an enemy. But the fact is, will you stand for the truth and say, I will not do this because it is against the word of God? Matthew 10:39 says, he who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. There will come a time when we will need to decide if we should drop the cross in order to belong to the world, or we gain life so that we can gain life in the world, but we lose it in eternity. And when the Bible says, he who loses his life for my sake, it is both life, whether you are alive or dead. Because sometimes, yes, you may be living, but you need to let go of the life that the world wants to offer you. There are people who will keep away from us because they don't want to hear the Jesus talk. There are associations that people expect us to belong to, but we must say no. You know, in my job, every week, sometimes 2-3 times a week, I will get email. I should come and pay $1,000, so that they will publish and say I'm one of the top 10 women in Africa. And I'm asking, what am I going to do with that? Of what purpose will it serve me? So I have an assistant in the office. Each time he comes, I forward it to her. She will reply to them, not interested, not interested. Some of them will say, okay, we won't take 1,500, we'll take 1,000. Not interested. It's okay, can you pay just 500? Not interested. Of what use is that association for me? Many people want to be mentioned, top this, top that, top that, top that. Can it take us to heaven? In fact, they start publishing until the kidnappers will start looking for you. I get these invitations all the time. So I was shocked one day when the person who handles my LinkedIn sent me an announcement, one of the top 100 African women. I said, where is this coming from? Did I mistakenly reply to anybody? They didn't even ask me. They maybe went to my LinkedIn or somewhere, got my photograph, put it there. I said, that one is their business. I don't even know who they are. Some organization in Ghana. There are places people expect us to be at, but we must say no. Despite the worldly attraction, especially for you young people. It's happening here, you want to be where it's happening. I'm always fighting with my children. They want to be where it's happening. I will say I don't agree that following Jesus is a personal choice. You will not find me there. If they decide to go, fine. But one day they will settle it with Jesus, whether they like it or not. Of what use? I tell people, I said, you go to, one of the things I hate most is to be invited to anything in the evening. I don't like going out in the evenings, especially weekend. My best weekends are the Saturdays, are the days I don't have to go anywhere. I do what I like with my time. But for some people, if they are not being invited somewhere every weekend, their life is not happening. There's got to be a time when you come to that realization to say, while these things may have its worldly attractions, it is not for me. Now, sometimes I see the way some pastors and their families advertise themselves on the internet, and I'm asking, what is going on here? Are we still preaching the gospel? Are we still preaching the gospel? Or are we doing show business? So when we can say no to all the distractions, we are alive in Christ, but we die to the world. So you are living, but you are saying no to anything that will distract you. Then you are alive in Christ, but the world will move on. Say that one. she don't die, make we leave am dey go. But on the other hand, we may be confronted with situations where we may be martyred for Christ. And the question is, will you be willing to carry the cross even under such circumstances? Or will you run away? And that's what the later part, the Matthew 10:39 is saying, that if we lose our lives for the sake of Christ, we will find it. Because he promised never to leave us nor forsake us, even in death. In Luke 14:28-32, let's pay attention. Jesus had two parables there. You know, when he was talking to the multitudes, he asked them to count the cost. And he used the story of the person who wants to build a tower and the cost of going to war to ask us to carefully plan and count the cost in order to make that important decision to take up our cross daily and follow him. Have you counted the cost? Are you willing to pay the cost to carry the cross? Or is it just a matter of convenience? Because today now we are coming out freely. We come, we worship, we come. But every day, every month we hear of communities attacked. Every day we hear of churches where they go in and shoot people. And I remember crossover service, one of my friends said in their church, they decided they would not do crossover service because they were scared that they may be attacked. If they came in here with a gun and say, who is the pastor of the church? Pastor Hope will look at me and look at her, then she will look at Pastor Oni, then we look at Pastor Chris. Everybody will be looking at the other. Or all of us will line out and say, we are the ones. There will be a cost. There is a cost in following Christ. And a lot of people preach and get to 90 years and die peacefully. But many others are martyred and killed because of Jesus. Will you take up that cross? If it comes to you, will you carry that burden, knowing that it will cost you your life? And Jesus emphasizes his point again by saying in verse 33, say, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. When Jesus is talking about all that he has, it's not just about your money or your foolish clothes and cars and houses. The most valuable thing you have is your life. All includes everything, including your life. Are you willing to give away your riches to support people? Are you willing to share your clothes? Are you willing to share your car? Are you willing to share your home? But most importantly, are you willing to give your life? You may not be called to give your life, but God knows what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. So if we are pretending, he knows that if somebody comes in with a gun now to kill all the Christians, that you'll be the first to declare that you're not a Christian anymore. He knows. And Jesus continues to emphasize this in verses 34 and 35, where he talks about salt being good and fit for purpose as long as it does not lose its flavor. Matthew 5:13 says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Let me rephrase it this way. Everyone who has decided to carry their cross and follow Jesus will be the salt of the earth. If we stop carrying our cross to follow Jesus, we will lose our saltiness. We will lose our flavor. If that happens, we can no longer be seasoned. We become good for nothing, and we will be thrown out and trampled underfoot by the devil and his agents. And as I come to the end of my sermon, let me say that it is our choice to whether we will be the salt we are called to be, or we will be the salt that has lost its flavor. You know, we call this event Festival of Life, this program. And I would like to remind us what 1 John 5:12 says, it says, whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. So if you want a festival of life, take up the cross, take up your cross and follow Jesus. And you will surely have the Son, who is the way, the truth, and the life. And a few questions to ponder as I closed. Have you done all that needs to be done to take up your cross daily? Or is it still a process? For a lot of us, it is still a process. The second question is, where is Jesus inviting you to say no to yourself in order to say yes to his calling? Go and ask yourself that question. That what are the things you need to start saying no to in your life, in your home, in your family, in your finances, so that you can be more aligned to the calling God has for those who want to take up the cross. The last question. What will your life and daily routine look like in terms of how you spend your money, how you manage relationships, and the decisions you make if you actually decide to take up the cross daily? What are the adjustments you will make to your finances, to your decisions, to your relationships in order to take up your cross and follow Jesus? God bless you.